Hey guys, and welcome back to episode 2 in this video series where we're creating an AI app from scratch. In the last episode, we went ahead and set up our Firebase and FlutterFlow project, and in this episode, we are designing and building the UI in FlutterFlow. So let's get right into it, and I will see you guys on the other side. In my last video, I said let's add the project dependency shad cn. I've actually changed my mind. We're not going to use that for this project, so let's go into our design system and remove that and just select none, and then go into our project dependencies and also remove that as well. Now what we're going to want to do is inside our colors, we are going to want to add a new color by hitting on the add color button, and we're going to call this transparent. If you guys want to take a guess at what color this will be, it will be clear. So we are going to click on here. If you have a light and a dark mode, for the light transparent, bring it all the way to white and then drop the opacity. And then for the dark mode, bring it all the way to 0, 0 and then drop the opacity and add just 0, 0. Excellent. Now inside our widget tree, you should have something that looks similar to this, with a home page, a login, and a sign up page. We are going to want to start by adding a new page. And FlutterFlow provides a bunch of different templates that you could select from. We're going to search for home. And more specifically, we're looking for this home 18-travel. And we're going to add it to our project with my theme and create page. Now to avoid confusion, I'm going to go ahead and delete the home page, just so when I say home, we know which one I'm talking about. That does cause an error because we have authentication set up and it's trying to send us to a logged in page. Just simply change that to home and you should be all set. Now from here, I'm going to recommend you guys take a look through this widget tree structure and try to understand how things are set up and how things are laid out. We are going to simplify this here in a second by simply clicking on each one of these containers, and you'll notice that the design of each, the three in here, are very similar. So to make our lives a little bit easier, we're just going to delete all but one of these. So delete, delete, and we're going to do the same thing for this one down here. So this should have 2 cards in here, and we're just going to delete one of them. First thing that we want to work on is an app bar. Right now we just have this current location and an icon button. And we're going to want to replace this with our logo and some user profile icon. So we can do that by coming into our icon button, changing the button size to 48 just because we work in increments of 8 and 4s. The fill color is going to be our secondary background. Our radius is going to be 12. And our icon is going to be profile. Now we want to make this secondary text so it stands out a little bit more. Now inside our text, we're going to actually wrap this widget in a row and add an image, our logo. We're going to set this width to 48 as well, set it width and height to 48, give it a border radius of 12, and select an asset. Now I've already uploaded a bunch of photos. When I say a bunch, just these 4 to the project. I will include a link to download these so you guys can follow along. So now I got my image up here, and I'm going to switch the spacing between them, get rid of that text or padding, and change this to something a bit larger, like that. Now you guys can call your app whatever you want. I'm just going to call mine Storytopia. Come up with your own unique, creative, fun name for it. And we're going to add some padding in this row, or item spacing rather. Simply just 12. Okay. Now we can take everything. You know what? We're actually going to move this into this row as well, just so we can get the spacing correct. So inside here, wrap the widget again in a row, drop the text in there, separate the rows. Boom. Look at that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Add some more padding. 12, maybe 8 actually. And we're cooking with gas, guys. So we can set our height if we so choose. I feel like 64 is a little bit too much, so maybe something like 56. And then maybe just give this some padding on both the top and the bottom of 8. So maybe I was spot on with that 64 initially. So this isn't looking too bad. We can kind of see how it's coming along and get an idea. I like the idea of like having some image here and being able to like create a story, and I like that button right there. So I'm going to first delete this text. Okay, I like something like that, and then we'll have like the user's favorites, another exact replica of this with their created stories, and then we'll have all of the other stories that other users create on the app. So let's start by removing this row. We no longer need this. And now let's give this a new text. Let's call this create the most amazing stories imaginable. Sure. And we're going to fix this border radius. We're going to make it 24. Actually, you got to do that on the larger one. So we're going to give this border radius 24. There we go. And go ahead and click this clip content. What that will do is it will cut anything outside of the column. It'll just make it disappear. Now we do have some issues with the font color. So let's change this, instead of being primary text, to info. That way when you switch to colors, the button's not changing colors, and it'll just stay that white. Now, this column has some weird spacing. It's 12 all the way around. Let's go ahead and make that 12 all the way around, including the bottom. Take this button, expand it, and put it down at the bottom. While we're in the button, let's make sure our height is set to 48 and our border radius is 12. I like the idea of this being centered as well, or maybe lower. It doesn't seem to be working how I anticipate, so let's just remove that. Okay. So from here, click on our container again, and we're going to change the background image. Instead of some beaches in Fiji, let's make this one of the assets that I've provided, like this createstories.png. The next thing that we want to do is convert these containers into components. So click convert to component, and we're going to call this story card small. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with components, I have made an entire video explaining when, why, and where to use them. Just know that this is a perfect example of when to use them, because we are going to be repeating the same layout over and over, or showing the same card with different data. So instead of having to change it each and every time, we can just simply convert a component, and now any edits that we want to make only need to happen in one area versus across the app. First thing we're going to do is, inside our container, we're going to get rid of this weird spacing. Just get rid of that. You can keep the 8, that doesn't really much matter. And we are going to want to make this expand. So right now we don't see the whole thing, and that's because there is a height constraint of 100. If we simply delete that, we can see that this now expands indefinitely. Let's fix that by going into the column and shrinking the column. Now it's fitting to size. I want to change this text up a little. First, by giving it a little bit smaller spacing or padding, and then making it into something a little bit more readable or smaller, because we might have longer titles. Next, I want to give it a max lines of 2. And what that means, guys, is if I were to continue typing forever, it eventually cuts it off, versus if I didn't have that, it would go on and on and on and on. And why this is helpful is because it can keep your design consistent. Like, you can set, hey, if I know everything's only going to have 2 lines, no matter like the size of it. So we aren't gonna show anything here. We could show genre. If you guys want to learn how to do that by yourself, like, go for it. But for this tutorial, I'm just gonna delete that, and I'm gonna change the text to view now, or read now rather. I feel like I should also remove that padding just so everything's in line. Okay, and then this button is black, which won't show up well in dark mode, so just simply change that to primary text, actually secondary text. And that looks much, much better. Let's make sure our radiuses are all 12 and 12. Actually, on our card one, let's change this to 16, just to match that roundness. Okay, now I'm going to change this back to some title: Harry Potter and the Half-Blooded Prince. Okay, I'm just using Harry Potter references because they have a ton of fan art, and I recently just watched the movies. You guys can use whatever you want. This will eventually be all dynamic, but just for building out the UI, I figured why not theme it a little bit. So let's change this image. Again, this will be dynamic in a little bit, but until we get there, I'm going to simply select an asset and one of the book covers I've provided. And there we go. So if we go back to our home page, we can see it's way over, but it's not looking too bad. It is a little bit larger than we anticipated, and that's because they have this as the expand height. Simply come into your container here and change this height from 360 to 340, and that looks much better now. Now, how we can fix the spacing here is you could simply come over here and add spacing, but we don't want to do that. And here's why. We want to go into the list view and actually add a start and end spacing of 16, as well as an item spacing of 12. And why this is because when you're swiping left to right, if you add the spacing on the list view itself, everything will cut off right here, meaning like as I'm swiping, this will just disappear right at this line. Let's take this label above it and wrap this in a column. Now we're going to come into this container right under it and drop that container in this column. And it messes up the label because the container is aligned in the middle. Just click on the align left, and we can give this a more fitting label like your favorite stories. And just for right now, we're just going to add some so we can kind of get the feel of the UI. Now, I actually want to duplicate this because I'm going to have another one called your created stories, just to give the page a little bit more depth. Alrighty. So from here, the next step is to create the same type of component, but for a large story item. So again, right click, convert to component, story, card, large, create component. Start by giving the title, make that a medium title. This is also expanding as large as it can. Make that shrink to the right size. Give this text a max lines of 3. Give everything a border radius of 12 and 16, so 12 for the image, 16 for the card. And just for display purposes, we're going to change this up to be an asset. And we're going to do this Harry Potter one here and just give it a fun title. Another Harry Potter story. There we go. So if we look in our home page, we'll have something like that. And this one, there is a little bit of an issue with this list down here, is that it is set to our primary, and that is not the primary column. So simply just turn that off and you should be good to go. So now we're going to switch to the ability to create a story. In my mind's eye, this will be a simple bottom sheet that pops up with a form for the users to fill out. So first we're going to come up here into add a new page, and we're going to scroll down till we see this create task page. Simply add that to your project, give it a name, create story page. And now we got to make some modifications to this. So first off, I don't necessarily need that input. I do like this one. I do like this. I don't need a container here. So I'm going to delete that container. Now I want to take this column and I want to drag it into this inside one. So I want to make it right at the top. And then I want to take these choice chips, move them up a little bit, as well as the tag with it. Now I'm going to click back onto this create a task column, and I'm going to give it a little bit more padding at the bottom, let's see, 12 maybe, just to give it some more space in between things. In our choice chips, I can go ahead and delete the web design, and I can call these short, medium, and long. And I'm going to duplicate a tag and move it under that and say, add some details. So this will be where the user can say a purple dragon riding a gray knight. I don't really care. You get the point. So let's go ahead and remove the label and instead add a hint. The difference between a label and a hint is like the hint disappears once the user starts typing, but the label will come up towards like the top of this and it'll like sit right here. So because we already have this manual like text label, we don't need an additional one. It will make the UI look cluttered. So we can just give this whatever hint you want. A purple dinosaur, again, call it whatever you want. And we're going to add another label. This is going to be called genre. And we need some type of drop down here. So inside this column, we're going to add a widget called Dropdown. And we're going to style this up. Let's first remove the width so it extends as far as it can. And we're going to give it a height of 48. We're going to give it a border radius of 12, a border color of alternate, and a border width of 2. Inside our choice chips, go ahead and delete the initial option. That will just make this select one. And we're going to see how everything looks in dark mode. So we look pretty good here in dark mode too. And now one of the last things that we need to do is take this button at the bottom, drop it into that column, remove the padding on the left and the right, make sure our border radius is set to 12 or whatever you guys have been using throughout the project. I've just been using 12. And what we can do from here is come into our max height container, and we're going to convert this to a component. And we're going to call this create story. Just call it create story component. So now we have a new component on that form that we've just created. We're going to change the max width background color to be secondary background. We're going to give it a border radius of 24 at the top, but nothing at the bottom. Now another thing that we want to do is inside here, I like to have like a drag bar so you can, like the user knows, hey, I can like drag this down if I have changed my mind. So we're going to build that in by simply adding a container. It was about at this point that my recording software glitched and broke on me, and I lost all of my progress up until about here. Meaning I had to go back and redo everything that you guys have seen up until this point. All that to say, a lot of time, effort, and energy went into creating this video and trying to make it as detailed but fast as possible. And if you guys wouldn't mind, just if you're finding any value out of this, giving me a like, comment, and maybe a subscription if you're feeling so inclined, I would really appreciate it, and it would make this all worth it. Anyways, let's get back to it. Not centered, which is a bit of an issue, and we can simply center it by clicking on this alignment here. Now after that, I do want to give it a little bit more spacing, like 12, just so it's not right up against the text. Now lastly, we're going to make these columns fit to size because we don't need it to be ginormous. And there we go. We've created our input field for create a story. We can just simply change this text to create story. The last thing that we need to do is just simply delete this create story page. So now we need some way to actually read the stories once a user has created them. We're going to add a new page, and we're going to filter by content until we come all the way down to details social post. I'm going to add this to my project. I'm going to call this read story view. And I'm going to hit add. So the first thing I want to do is remove the stuff that we don't need. I don't need this comment container, so I'm going to delete that. I don't need this button down here at the bottom, so I'm going to delete that. And I don't need this extra icon button. We'll have a menu that users can choose from. And let's make sure that looks like an actual phone. Now, I want to make this image a little bit larger by simply coming to the container and making this like 270 or something. I'm fine with the title that size. I'm going to change this font color because it's a little bit hard to see in dark mode. So I click here and I change the font color to tertiary, and I'm going to make this medium. And that's kind of all that our story is going to have. It's going to have the image up here at the top, and then it's just going to have some text that you can scroll through to read. Hitting too many buttons, guys. It'll look something like this, which I think is perfect for this demo. So now we need some way for users to update their profile and or log out / delete their account if they so choose. So we're going to head over to our handy dandy templates and search for simple profile. Yeah, let's go with this one, profile. And let's change this to fit our needs. Firstly, let's go ahead and change this image out by coming up to this page background and again selecting asset and choosing one of the predefined assets. Now we're going to want to make this image alignment down at the bottom or middle, up to you. I think the bottom looks better. And we're going to condense these. I don't think we need two separate columns. So we're going to take this one, drop it into app settings. We're going to just go ahead and then delete this top content view because we don't have any notifications. We're not going to set those up, and we don't have many app settings either. So let's just simply change the top padding to 8. And it's always good to have some type of support in terms of service if you guys are going to be uploading this to the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. They do require those things, so we're just going to leave them here for right now. And we're going to add a simple edit profile page by coming back to our templates and searching again for profile and choosing something like this, default. And we're going to call this edit profile. Create page. So we don't need city. We don't need state. We really just need email and password. And of course the photo. So we're going to change the roundness on this, and then we're going to duplicate it. 12. Delete, and we're going to call this your name. Should be, yep, that's fine, but your email. Okay, so we have successfully created our profile. Now the last couple things I'm thinking about that we need for this app are some type of tertiary components. The ones that I have in mind are some type of empty list widget. So if the user doesn't have any liked or created stories, there needs to be some type of widget that says, hey, create a story. Another widget that I'm thinking that we need is some type of generation. Like as the story is being generated and the image is being generated, there is some wait time there. So some type of animation that like lets the user know, hey, we're working on stuff in the back end. And then lastly, a menu type of drop-down item for, if you want to like or delete one of your previous stories. So we're going to get working on those tertiary components right now. Firstly being with the drop-down by going over to our templates, new component, and then we're going to just look for, I think it's under drop-down. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to do 8. I'm going to add it to my theme. Drop-down menu. Okay. So we're just going to change out some of these icons. So sharing would be nice, honestly. I might keep that in there. We'll see if we actually implement it. We're going to get rid of assign, but we're going to add another one, or change this one to heart. And we're going to call this favorite. And we're going to make this shrink to size. And there we go. We got our drop-down menu created. Now we need to create another one for empty list. This is actually going to be a blank component. So empty list. No, we're going to call this stories, empty list, no created stories. Create component. So let's go ahead and add a container in here. And this container is going to have a column, an image, some text, and a button, like so. So we can't really see the text. Interesting. Okay. And that's because our container does have a width and a height. So let's go ahead and remove these real quick, just so we have some canvas to work in. Now, this is going to be an asset like we've done before. We're going to add in our travel diary. We're going to say no stories created yet. And we're going to give this a text of like create now. So let's style this up a little bit more. Again, we know that we're going to want 12 on this. We're going to want 48 for the button. Button should also expand. No, I actually don't think I want it to expand. We're going to want some type of heading here. I think the no stories created, which is good at the title medium. Let's add some padding in between these, like 12. And let's make this image 250 by 250. Now go ahead and make the column shrink to size. And now we can get rid of the background, like so. Seeing if there's, there is a way to get rid of the, so yeah, why don't we do that? Height of 160, and then width of 200. And then this will also have a width of 200. Maybe I can make the text a little bit larger to fit that size as well. There we go. Okay, now I feel much better about that. We're going to do the same thing for a generating story component. So we're going to add another component called generating story. And again, same process, add a container, add an image, and then add some text. Cancel. Wrap this in a column first. Forgot about that. Now add some text. Get rid of the height constraints, get rid of the width constraints right now. Let's set this to be an asset, and it's going to be this creative interface design. And let's make it as large as we so choose. I feel like 300 will be good. And also 300 will be good. And now we can call this creating your story. ... Can probably get rid of the height actually. Make it fit a little bit better, so 210. That sounds good. And give this a little bit larger text, like our title. And then now let's add some padding to the top. 12. Let's make the column fit to size, like so. So now we're just going to remove the background color, like that. And we've created our generating story component to display. Well guys, that brings us to the end of this video. We have successfully built the UI in FlutterFlow, and in my next video, I'm going to cover everything on how to hook it up from the UX to the agent flow. If you guys have made it this far and have found some value in this type of content, could you consider giving me any feedback? I'm new to this YouTube thing, and I would love to learn what you guys liked, what you guys didn't, and how I can improve in the future. Anyways, that's enough of me talking. I will see you guys in the next one, and until then, take care, have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye, y'all.